What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 college football schedule preview and very early projected record series. The USC Trojans are up next. Before we look ahead to 2025, let's take a look back at what USC did in 2024. Here are my projections and predictions last year for USC. My projection for this team was actually pretty high at 7-5, but then my prediction for them was just 5-7. So it's not that I thought USC was going to be bad last year. It was because of the schedule being so tough, especially in the non-conference, but USC did a little bit better than my prediction, but they were under my projection at least. They went 6-6 last year in the regular season, so kind of an up and down year for USC in 2024. In their first year as a Big Ten conference opponent and then also as a Big Ten conference team. But if you count their bowl game victory at the end of the year, this team went 7-6 overall. So yeah, it was kind of an up and down year for USC. Let's just put it that way. Here was a schedule from last year for USC, and again, they were 6-6 with this schedule. And like I said, a pretty tough schedule last year, and especially in the non-conference. In the non-conference, they played LSU, of course, out of the SEC on Sunday night in Las Vegas. They were able to win that game, and then also played Utah State and Notre Dame. So yeah, Notre Dame and LSU made the non-conference schedule, and they also made the schedule a lot tougher here for USC. And then you take a look at the Big Ten schedule for them. First off, you look at their home games. That played Wisconsin, Penn State, Rutgers, Nebraska, and yeah, that was it. 4 home games in the Big Ten last year. And then also in the away schedule, they played 5 away games in the Big Ten, it looks like. They played Michigan on the road, Minnesota, Maryland, Washington, and UCLA. So yeah, 4 home games last year in the Big Ten, and then 5 away games in the Big Ten. And yeah, they lost so many close games. Let's just put it that way. I think the reason why USC went 6-6 last year, and they were able to make it to a bowl game at least, but they lost so many close games. You look at these games in the red here that they lost to. You know, they were close games last year. You know, they lost by Notre Dame by a couple of possessions. You know, a couple of turnovers did cost them that game. They lost to Penn State in overtime. They lost, you know, to all these other teams by like 1 possession. So yeah, USC lost a lot of close games last year. Can they win those close games this year in 2025? Let's take a look ahead to 2025 now. Here's the schedule coming up here for USC. Before we go game by game, though, let's take a look at who the Trojans play in the non-conference for this season. So you look at their non-conference schedule, they will play Missouri State, Georgia Southern, and then Notre Dame on the road. So, of course, that's not going to change. They play the Fighting Irish every year, of course, and they will play them this time on the road. Last year, they played them in the last game of the regular season. It usually goes back and forth. Sometimes they'll play them either in September or October, and then sometimes they'll play them in the rivalry weekend. This time, they will play them in the month of October, I believe. So, yeah, they will play Notre Dame on the road. But the non-conference schedule, it's not too bad this year for USC. You got Georgia Southern, which is not a bad Group of 5 team, but then you got Missouri State, a game that you should win pretty easily here for the Trojans. Let's now go take a look at the home schedule here for the Big Ten for USC, and just like last year, they played 4, home games. This time they will play 5 home games in the Big Ten. They'll play Michigan State, Michigan, Northwestern, Iowa, and UCLA. So these are all very winnable games here for USC at home. Michigan State, that's a pretty winnable game. Same thing with Northwestern and then rivalry UCLA. Iowa and Michigan will be 2 tough teams to face, but, USC is playing them at home, which I think is really good news. Obviously, the Michigan game is a big revenge game for the Trojans. They lost to Michigan last year by 6 points. They lost to them by 1 possession, so, yeah, that'll be a revenge game there for USC, so that's your home schedule. All very winnable games here for the Trojans. Looking at the away schedule, they'll play 4 away games in the Big Ten. They'll play at Purdue, at Illinois, at Nebraska, and at Oregon. So, pretty tough road schedule. You got Purdue and Nebraska. Those could be pretty winnable games here for USC. Maybe same thing with Illinois. I know Illinois was pretty good last year, but I don't really want to go that far with Illinois this year. I know there's a lot of hype around that team, but this game will be on the road. It's a very tough place to play. It's also a very tough place to play at Nebraska and then obviously Oregon. I mean, obviously it's not a really too far of a travel here for USC, which I think is good news, but yeah, Oregon obviously going to be the toughest road game here on this schedule for USC. So yeah, pretty tough away schedule when you got Nebraska, Illinois, and Oregon on the schedule on the road. But yeah, Purdue definitely is a winnable game here on the road because they were not really good last year. So that's your away schedule. Let's go back to the schedule now here for USC and go game by game now. They'll start things off with Missouri State on August 30th. Then they play Georgia Southern on September the 6th. So a couple of games, you should start out 2-0, and then they go into Big Ten play. They'll play on the road at Purdue on September 13th. Then it's Michigan State at home on September 20th, and then you got on the road at Illinois on September 27th. Their first bye week actually comes at a really good time. They get a bye week before playing Michigan at home on October the 11th, and like I said, they lost to Michigan last year by 1 possession. This year they get them at home. That's a big revenge game there for them, and they do get them at home, and they get a bye week before playing this game, which I think is really good news here for the Trojans. And then after that, it's Notre Dame on the road on October 18th, so they play their third non-conference opponent there on October the 18th, and then they get a bye week right after that Notre Dame game. Then they get Nebraska on the road on November 1st. So you got back-to-back road games there with Notre Dame and Nebraska, which will be really tough, but the thing is, they're not in back-to-back weeks, so you don't have to go back-to-back and travel and everything. So yeah, that's the good news there if you're a USC fan. Then after that, it's a home game against Northwestern on November 8th. Then also a home game against Iowa on November 15th. And then you go on the road to play Oregon on November 22nd. And then you close things out with UCLA at home on November 29th in that rivalry game. So looking at the schedule for USC, it's pretty tough. I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty tough schedule. Again, you got Notre Dame and Oregon both on the road. Those are definitely going to be your tricky games here on the road. Then you got Illinois, which will be a tough one as well, but you got pretty winnable games here at home. Michigan State, Michigan, Northwestern, Iowa, and UCLA. So yeah, they have a pretty good chance to probably win those games at home. And then you got those 2 games in the non-conference that you probably should take care of business in. So let's now get a projection based on how tough this schedule is for USC. This is the scale I'll be using here for their official projection. And like I said, if it's a 1% game in the red, that's pretty much counted as an automatic loss. Then your 20% games in the orange, those are games where USC will be about a double-digit underdog. 40% games in the yellow, those are games where USC will be a clear underdog by about a touchdown, 6-7 points. And then your 50-50 games, those are obviously going to stay in the white, games that really could go either way. 60% games in the purple, those are games where USC will be about a favorite by about a touchdown, like 6 or 7 points. And then your 80% games in the blue, those are games where USC should be favored by double digits. And then your easy wins come in the 99% range in the green. So we'll start with those automatic wins and those easy wins here for USC. And I think you got a couple of them, and that's Missouri State and Georgia Southern. They absolutely should take care of business here. Missouri State, an FCS team, they should be able to beat them pretty easily. And then obviously Georgia Southern out of the group of 5. They've upsetted, Power 4 teams in the past, against Big Ten opponents, They did that against Nebraska in the year of 2021 when Scott Frost was still there at Nebraska and losing those close games. But yeah, Georgia Southern, I don't know if they're the same team as they used to be, but yeah, USC definitely should be favored in both of those games. Those are games that are definitely over that 95 to 99% range, and they should be favored by at least 20 plus points or maybe even more than that. And then I don't have any games here in the blue. I don't think you can really favor USC in any games in the blue by double digits, but I have a lot of purple games on here where I think they're going to be favored by 6 or 7 points. I got 4 of those: Purdue, Michigan State, Northwestern, and UCLA. I think USC will be favored in all those by 6 or 7 points. Purdue, just because it's on the road, I know that game probably should be in the blue, but because it's on the road, that's the reason why it turns into a purple game. If it was at home for USC, it would definitely be in the blue. Michigan State, Northwestern, and UCLA, all not really good teams last year, but you never know. These 3 teams can probably turn things around. Michigan State has a second-year head coach. Same thing with UCLA, and Northwestern obviously wasn't really good last year after their really good year in 2023. they took a bit of a step back in 2024, but you never know. These three teams can probably turn things around in 2025, and I wouldn't be surprised if USC probably lost one of these three games because, again, they lost so many close games last year by one possession. Let's now go to the games where I think USC is going to be an underdog in. We got one game here in the orange, which is also counted as a slight loss, not as an automatic loss, compared to the red, but still a pretty big loss. Oregon on the road. I think USC is going to be a double-digit underdog here against the Ducks. Oregon just way too talented, way too explosive on both sides of the football. I mean, I don't know if Oregon will be as good as they were last year. They may not go undefeated this season, but they got some talent down there. And, a lot of these teams that you're seeing on the schedule, some of these teams won't be as good as they were last year. Maybe, for example, Illinois. They might not be as good as they were last year, but you never know. I think USC, though, will still be a double-digit underdog here against the Ducks. Oregon, again, because it's on the road, that's the reason why it turned into the orange. And then I got one game here in the yellow where I think USC is going to be about a 6 or 7 point underdog. That comes against Notre Dame. And I know a lot of people are going to say this game should be in the orange because it's on the road, and Notre Dame was very good last year. But again, Notre Dame might not be as good as they were last season. You never know. But yeah, Notre Dame, because of how close the game was until the fourth quarter, that's the reason why it turned into a yellow game. And plus, this game's in the month of October, so it's not really in the late part of November. We could probably see an upset here. You never know. Even on the road here, I think USC might have a chance to probably be competitive against Notre Dame. Like I said, the Fighting Irish might not be as good as they were last year. But yeah, if USC probably has another one-possession type game, it's probably going to be this one here against Notre Dame. And I think they'll be like a 6 or 7 point underdog here in this one against the Fighting Irish. And then that leaves you with 4 total 50-50 games. Illinois, Michigan, Nebraska, and Iowa. These are all games that really I think can go either way here for the Trojans. Illinois, because it's on the road, Illinois probably should be a yellow game, but I'm going to stick with it here and put it as a 50-50 game for right now. I don't really want to go far with Illinois' pretty big season last year and give them all that hype just yet. I mean, it's pretty early. We don't know what the rosters are going to look like, and things can really change here as now we're in the month of March, and as we go into the month of April as well. Some rosters could really change, and some players can still transfer out. Michigan, Nebraska, and Iowa, I think these are all pretty even matchups. Michigan might be the more better team than USC, and then Iowa the same thing, but Nebraska, because it's on the road, that's the reason why, that game is, in the white. And that's kind of a battle here between these two teams that lost close games last year by one possession. So this is kind of a battle here between two one possession lost teams here between Nebraska and USC. So I think that's why it's a pretty even matchup. But odds would say they probably, split these 50-50 games. They probably would, win 2 out of the 4, and then they'll probably be favored in these purple games, which does lead me into my projection here for USC. What does the projected record come out to be here for the Trojans based on how tough this schedule is? Again, we count a couple of those green games as win. You average out all the purple games at 60%. You count that orange game against Oregon as a loss, and then you average out that one game in the yellow at 40% against Notre Dame. And like I said, I think they split these 50-50 games. They win 2 out of the 4. They will be favored in all those purple games, and then you got your 2 wins in the green. That's probably going to give you a total of 8 wins, maybe at worst 7 wins, but the projection is 8-4 for USC. So I think they'll probably split those 50-50 games, and I think they'll probably be underdogs against Oregon. They probably lose 2 50-50 games, and then they'll probably be underdogs against Notre Dame. Let's say they probably lose that game, and that will give you like 4 losses there. That's how you got a projected record of 8-4. So not a bad projection here for USC, based on how tough of a schedule is. I mean, this prediction probably will change once we get into the month of May, but I think as of right now, worst case is probably 7-5, best case probably 9-3. But if they go 6-6, I don't think that would be a disappointment because of how tough this schedule is. Again, Oregon and Notre Dame are going to be really tough games on the road, and then obviously Nebraska and Illinois are definitely trap games here for USC. But yeah, 8-4 is what I'm going to go with here for USC as of right now. Again, it's not a prediction, it's simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. That is my projection here for USC. Let me guys know what you think about USC. Do you guys agree or disagree? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and also give me your thoughts about USC's schedule. Is it tough or not so tough? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.